former FBI general counsel and former lead prosecutor on the Robert Mueller investigations. I want to pick up with what Katie was talking about, and also, by the way, your terrific piece that you wrote for the New York Times, because you talked about the connection between Michael Cohen and the jurors, how he's looking at them, how they were paying close attention to him. Obviously, this was not written today. This was written based on your earlier observations. But I'm wondering about Todd Blanche, because even though you can't read the minds of jurors, you know when a lawyer is connecting, in my limited experience. You know when a witness is connecting. You know when they're paying close attention. What's your thought today, and particularly about Todd Blanche and the way the jury is observing him?
Well, I think the color that Katie Tur gave is exactly my impression as well. And there was, I agree, the striking moment when you heard the voice of Michael Cohen on his podcast, which was distinctly different than the in-court Michael Cohen. That doesn't mean Michael Cohen is lying on the stand, but it is useful for the jury to see that that is not what he's not always in the mode that he's in the courtroom. For every day that he's been on, whether it's on direct or cross, he is unflappable, even on cross-examination that mentions his wife, and, as Andrea just pointed out, cross-examination with text with his daughter, which I personally think is playing poorly. The cross there is about essentially the daughter thinking how great he is and how he deserves so much. And, that's sort of what you would want your child to be thinking. So I'm not sure that was the right decision. Todd Blanche is obviously doing better than the last time we saw him, but that's a very low bar. As to Danny's point, his sort of technique is as a professional in the area, his technique needs some work. And that's why you're hearing Katie Tur say, I'm not sure I totally follow what he's getting at and how this is supposed to land. And that is actually because of the techniques that Todd Blanche is using.
I wonder if it would land better.
Positive from his perspective.
If, Andrew, it would land better if they were a little tighter, because he's still talking about him not getting the job that he believes he wanted, chief of staff. Going back into the document, Todd Blanche, do you recall expressing disappointment to Pastor Scott that Trump hadn't brought you into the administration? I may have expressed frustration, but I don't recall. Did you have communication with Pastor Scott about your frustration that President Trump did not bring you to the White House? I don't recall. Did you have communication with Pastor Scott even after Trump took office about the fact that you weren't working at the White House? I don't recall that. Do you recall on National Prayer Day expressing frustration that you were in the office and not at the White House with everyone else? That I wasn't invited? Yes, sir. Do you recall talking to Pastor Scott about that? What do you recall saying to him? That it would have been nice to be invited. Again, this is yet the latest in a string of people, Reince Priebus among others, that he's trying to show here's a guy who's really unhappy about not working in the White House. Does it need to continue to go on and on with every person he might have expressed that to?
Well, I think that what we're seeing is the defense trying to figure out what they're going to argue in summation. And it looks like what they're going to say is because he was only the president's personal attorney, that he was so angry with President Trump for not being brought to Washington, just being his personal attorney, that he's concocted this whole story, a story which the state will argue just happens to have a mountain of corroboration. So, look, they have to come up with something. I think most lawyers might say being the president's personal attorney is pretty darn good. So it's hard to see that as a particularly compelling motive. But you do have something that is a foolproof line of cross that Todd Blanche, I think, did deliver on, as he should, which is that Michael Cohen has committed perjury. He has lied under oath. He has admitted that he lied to a federal judge. He has said that sort of repeatedly. And they want to say that when it's in his personal interest, he's willing to lie and say now it's in his personal interest to see Donald Trump go down because he's making money off of it. So he's just saying this lie because he both is a disgruntled former employee and because he gets to make money off it. So you shouldn't believe him. That is the line across. By the way, welcome to New York City, where there's lots and lots of traffic and police activity.
Can I just say you're doing remarkably well for not being a professional correspondent. Kudos to you. Sorry, continue.
Well,
sure. I did want to point out a couple things that I thought really fell flat, and something I know personally is they tried to say Michael Cohen got a lower sentence for his crimes in spite of his not cooperating fully. And, I know he actually did cooperate with the special counsel Mueller investigation. And that was said by our prosecutors at the time that we had a representative in court for his plea and for his sentencing. And the representations from the prosecution in the special counsel office was that he had cooperated and helped the investigation. And that is normally a huge reason that a judge gives somebody a lower sentence. So I think Todd Blanche, I'm not saying he did it intentionally, but I don't think he correctly represented to the jury the situation. He tried to make it sound like he lied to the judge in order to get a lower sentence, and I'm not sure that is a full representation of the facts. The other thing that Todd Blanche did that was a real misstep was he asked him about Michael Cohen's perjury in Congress, where Michael Cohen lied about the Trump Tower, the Trump Moscow project in Russia. And if you recall, that was something he pled guilty to and said basically he distanced President Trump from that whole transaction and say that he wasn't really involved. It was a long time ago. I didn't really talk to him that much. And Todd Blanche asked him about that. And Michael Cohen explained that those false statements that he made were the product of his talking to a number of lawyers to craft that statement, that it didn't come just from Michael Cohen. And he said one of the lawyers who was involved in crafting that statement was a lawyer for President Trump. So that was a real misstatement, a miscue from Todd Blanche to bring out what I thought was pretty damaging proof as to the president's, at least the president's counsel's role in what is represented by Michael Cohen today under oath was something that was a misleading of Congress.